This is the Bible Forum. I'm Warren Sprouse. We welcome you to this edition, the January 15, 2017 edition. We're going to be talking about the National Geographic and chromosomes from a biblical perspective. National Geographic is the same magazine that recently ran a cover story on the most influential figures in ancient history, but left out Moses and Jesus. Now they're trying their hand at gender theory. It's a new cover story entitled How Science is Helping Us Understand the Gender Revolution. Finally, a scientist is going to tell us what's up with the gender identities: gay, straight, transgender, cisgender, I don't even know what that one is, gender non-conforming, queer gender, agender, pangender. The number and the varieties seem to multiply and mutate by the week. Our guide through this gender labyrinth is someone named Robin Marantz Hennig, who's a scientist. Well, she's not really a scientist. Turns out she's a journalist. But there's still science involved here, which, although Hennig doesn't seem to have much training in, is waiting there to be found. And since she has a journalism degree, we trust that she'll find it. Her first discovery is about chromosomes. There are X's and there are Y's. And in primitive times, when people believed there were boys and girls, the combinations of these chromosomes were thought to determine whether someone was male or female. But today, some people with an XY chromosome, who we used to think were males, but just maybe didn't have fully developed male genitalia, were still males. And some people with XX chromosomes, who we used to think were females, but maybe they didn't have fully developed female genitals either, or maybe they had developed male genitalia. Well, rather than conclude in such cases that the person is a male whose male chromosomes were not allowed to do what male chromosomes do in males, or a female whose female chromosomes were not allowed to do what female chromosomes do in females, which is the obvious, this authoress simply concludes that chromosomes don't dictate whether someone is male or female. Now, she's not alone in this. That is the fundamental belief among the whole transgender community. Now, maybe she just wasn't genetically predisposed to be logical. But that also presents her with problems of what does make someone male or female. A problem which she ignores, dispenses with, uses some other logical procedure to nullify or whatever, concluding that there's really no such thing as being male or female. Instead, there is gender fluidity, according to which gender is determined by feelings. In fact, there are a lot of feelings in Hennig's article, which seems to explain why, despite the prominent mention of science in the title, there's so little of it in the article. What science has mentioned is surrounded by feelings, covered by feelings, smothered by feelings. Science has about as much chance of survival in this article as a fox thrown into a cage of hounds. The little science the article actually contains either supports her conclusion, although weakly, or is slightly stronger but doesn't support her conclusion. And it clearly feels that science justifies her case, and so therefore it must. In fact, despite the title, Hennig's case really has little to do with science at all. Rests almost entirely upon an avalanche of anecdotes that can never prove a point. It doesn't matter how many people you produce who think they are a particular gender, despite the chromosomes being something different. The fact is that someone's genitals didn't develop properly is also not evidence that there is a gender difference or confusion here. Nor will it a never-ending parade of people who don't accept the gender binaries prove that there aren't any. In fact, there's a funny thing about binaries. As soon as you say you don't accept them, you create a binary between the people who do and the people who don't. And there's another problem. This lady apparently forgot that before the women's magazine she writes for had started talking about gender fluidity, the idea that gender is not dictated by genes, the same bunch of people had just been talking about sexual orientation, namely the idea that homosexuality is dictated by genes. Well, which way do you want to go on this? In other words, being born male and female is not dictated by your genes, but being born gay is? That's a binary for you. The idea that you're born either male or female is known in sociology, a field only slightly more scientific than journalism, as essentialism. The view that you are what you are despite how you may feel. Now, this is opposed to a philosophical concept called constructivism. And that's the view that you can decide what you want to be when you want to be it. And of course, when you decide that you don't want to be that anymore, you can undecide, or maybe make another decision and go a different way. These people look at gender theory. They see essentials when they want to, and they don't see the essentials when they choose not to. It's called something rational fluidity. We are wrapped up in this rational fluidity to our eyeballs. And the kids are paying the price. We've talked about it before, and you know it. You can look it up. There are case histories, a preponderance of case histories of people who have undergone gender reassignment surgery. When this occurs to young people, teenagers, young adults, there is a fallout. It may not be a medical fallout, but it's definitely a psychological, sociological fallout. It is a destructive thing, statistically, which means not everybody goes through this. But it is dangerous for these young people to have corrective surgery. Why parents give into it is beyond me. Well, I have this little boy, and boy, he is just as feminine as they come. Okay, I've seen that. You've seen that. What does that mean? What the science teaches us is that the masculinity or the femininity of any child, boy or girl, is dictated by the amount of testosterone that baby is exposed to in the mother's womb. But it doesn't mean that that masculine little girl is a guy. She's just a girl who's more masculine than most girls. You've met them, I've met them, not a problem. And that guy, who is just as prissy as he comes, loves all the girly stuff, gets along with the women, just, he just did that. See him on television. Doesn't mean he's a girl. Just means he's not as masculine as, these football players or something. I don't know. In an age when we are manipulating children in utero, when we are trying to abort them and they won't die, you have children that don't go full term. What if you have a little boy or a little girl who only goes 5, maybe 6 months of gestation and is born early? Well, they probably have not been exposed to all the testosterone or whatever the chemicals or the various things are that they normally would be. They definitely haven't had time. And children that, come early oftentimes have eye problems, hearing problems, heart problems, muscular problems. They didn't have time. I'm not a doctor. I'm no more scientist than this girl is. I say, let's err on the side of rational reasoning ability instead of, well, I just think I'm a boy, I'm a girl, and go with it. Because the statistics on the other end are destructive. These people are committing suicide. We're not having fun.